Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're going to wait a few more minutes to let everyone sign in, and then we'll get started shortly. All right. We will go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us this evening for our final Tartan Family webinar of the semester. My name is Andrew Greenwald. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the Assistant Director of First Year Orientation and Family Engagement. We're excited to be back with you this evening in Pittsburgh, that is, with representatives from the Hub to talk about the financial aid process for the 2023-2024 academic year. Tonight, I'm joined by Maggie Sikora, who's the Director of the Hub and the Associate Director of Enrollment Services. She'll be providing an overview of services offered through the Hub and focusing on information outlining the financial aid process for the next academic year. Before I turn things over to my colleagues from the Hub, I do want to review a couple of quick housekeeping tips for those of you joining for the first time or who may be less familiar with Zoom. As you might be able to tell, we are in the webinar format, which means that as an attendee, your video and microphone are turned off. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please use the Q&A feature, which can be found on the bottom in your Zoom control panel. We'll use the first half of our time tonight for our guests to present, and then we'll leave the second half for Q&A before we wrap up by 8:30 p.m. Maggie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Andrew, and hello, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us tonight. As you might notice on the screen, the topic that we are going to be addressing primarily is financial aid information and timeline for, believe it or not, 2023 and 2024. If I didn't say, my name is Maggie Sikora. I know Andrew introduced me. Thank you. I am the director of the Hub and an associate director for enrollment services. I use she, her pronouns. And the next slide, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a brief overview in terms of what we'll be addressing. Carrie, my colleague, is also on the call, and he'll be presenting along with me. So today's agenda is I'm going to introduce you a little bit more to the Hub for those of you who are not familiar. Carrie is going to talk about how to apply for aid, the types of aid. We're also going to go over an award letter and finally round it out with some information about My Plaid Student, as well as some other financial resources and that are available to you and your student. So the Hub, if you are not aware, is a one-stop shop for enrollment services. So what that means is the one-stop shop is really meant to be that for students and families, particularly around the administrative areas that the Hub represents, and that is financial aid, the student accounts office, and the university registrar's office. In addition, and as the screen mentions, we also have ID card services within the Hub as well. So anytime that you or your student has a question about the areas that we represent, financial aid, student accounts, registration and records, and or their ID card, they can come to the Hub either in person, they can call us, they can email us, they can find us on social media. We are available. Our business hours are up there. Monday and Wednesday, we are open both in person and online from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10:30 to 4:30. And on Fridays, in-person services are from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., but we continue with the online virtual services as well as the phone queue until 4:30 on Fridays as well. So please familiarize yourselves with the Hub. If you have not already, we are here to help and support you and your student through their journey, and particularly with those areas that we represent. So just to kind of talk a little bit about our website, which can be a bit overwhelming, some resources for you that I would like to point out is student information online. Now that's more so for your student. You may have heard your student talk about SIO, right? That is the student information online portal, which you can get to from our website. We have a parent and family version of that as well, and it's called My Plaid Student. So we'll talk a little bit more about My Plaid Student. If you have not yet signed up, or if your student has not given you the access to sign up for My Plaid Student, it's a wonderful resource. It mirrors some of the information that your students have on SIO, such as award letters, current account balance. You can make payments through My Plaid Student and SIO, and all of that can be accessed via our website, which is cmu.edu/hub. We also have a lot of information just for enrollment services broadly. College liaison, hub liaison contact information. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means in the next slide. Payment options, information about registration, how to obtain transcripts, and of course, the updated costs of tuition and fees and other financial aid resources. And then finally, and importantly, we also have access to the academic calendar through the Hub websites, which falls under that, University Registrar's Office that we also represent from a student and family service aspect in the Hub. There are also forms. You may have been asked to fill out some of them, or your student as part of the financial aid process, perhaps. So there is a red banner at the bottom of our website, and one of the options on that banner on each page is forms and documents. And then you can access a lot of those via the website and that particular link as well. Okay, so the Hub liaisons, 3 of whom are joining me tonight, and one of whom you're going to hear present here momentarily. Carrie Zender, Melissa Skasik, Erica Tatry, and Triana Davarin. And what's very important to know about the Hub liaisons are a lot of things really, but a couple highlights is that they really are your point of contact and your student's point of contact for any specific in-depth questions you have about financial aid, student accounts, registration, and records. You can also call the general Hub line or email us. We have a team of student services specialists who are not pictured here as well. They serve as more generalists in the Hub. And then the Hub liaisons serve as more, specific, relationship building support team for you and your students as they journey and you journey throughout their time at Carnegie Mellon University. We operate via a college model. I think that one of my colleagues is going to put in the chat the link to where you can find, based on college and sometimes department, it goes down to department at certain times, who your student's Hub representative, Hub liaison is. This information is also in student information online. So based on, let's say, Erica, for example, if your student is a student in the School of Computer Science, then Erica is their Hub liaison, and so on and so forth. So please do use the Hub liaisons as a resource. We are here to support you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of our Hub liaisons, Carrie Zender, to talk about the financial aid process. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Maggie. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to talk to you here about how to apply for financial aid for this upcoming 23-24 academic year. So what you see here is our standard undergraduate financial aid timeline. This has been going on for many years, but the FAFSA and the CSS profile open up on October 1st of every year. So we're about 2 months in here to this timeline. Every academic year, both the FAFSA and the CSS profile need to be completed in order to determine financial aid eligibility. From the months of February to October, like I said, go ahead, do the FAFSA, do the CSS profile. We have a preferred deadline for completion of February 15th. This is not a hard stop deadline. I assure you of that. You will not be penalized in the event that the applications are turned in after February 15th. But from the months of February to June is whenever we begin to review the applications and the supporting documents that may have been requested and should be submitted to either the IDOC portal or directly to us. So we do ask you to get those applications in here as quickly as you can. From February to June, we may outreach to your child, asking them to submit the documents. We will let them know what needs to be submitted and where, and confirm that upon receipt. From a financial aid award letter perspective, typically it is late June. If the FAFSA, the CSS profile have been completed, all the documents are submitted, which may or may not have been requested. If it's a clean file, returning undergraduate students will be awarded in late June with their award letters for the academic year. Next slide, please. So the next few slides, we're going to go over step-by-step instructions on how to apply for financial aid. Like I said, the FAFSA and the CSS profile need to be completed. They opened up here on October 1st. Go ahead and complete them at your leisure. We have that preferred deadline of February 15th. Through your internet, if you click on the view instructions page, it'll take you to a new page where you can click on the link that will take you to the FAFSA. It will take you directly to the CSS profile as well. In the event that we do need supporting documentation, such as a W-2 or a tax return, we will let your child know what is needed, when it is needed, and why it is needed. Like I said, they can either go to submit the documents to IDOC if the IDOC portal is open for them, or if it's a one-off document that we just need to confirm some information on, that could be sent directly to us on our side. Students can go online through their Student Information Online account or their SIO and into their financial aid portal to see what documents we are requesting at any time. If they are in the current academic year, make sure that they choose the 23-24 academic year, just to see if we are requesting anything at this time. But once we update it on our side, the site is live and they can confirm that on their side as well. Next slide, please. So mid-June rolls around, mid to late June rolls around, your student gets their award letter. Like I said, once the application is complete and all the documents have been submitted, they'll get that award letter. In the event that they do have federal loans that are offered to them, in order to borrow the subsidized and or unsubsidized federal direct loan, the students do have to complete 2 required loan documents. The direct loan master promissory note, it's your promise to repay the loan, and the direct loan entrance counseling. It's kind of a quiz. If you borrow X while you're an undergrad, you're going to have to pay Y back in the future. Pretty simple to complete, might take about an hour to complete both documents, but both are required to be completed to borrow the loan. If your child has completed the loan documents for this year and have already borrowed those loans, more often than not, they do not have to complete those in future years unless something happens, and we'll let them know. Next slide, please. One other item that they have to complete on the first time that they enroll into their SIO or they open up their SIO is their Title IV authorizations. That is just to receive their Title IV funding in the event that they do have a credit balance on their student account. It's underneath the financial aid permissions page of the finances tab. Like I said, when the Title IV funds are greater than the cost of tuition and et cetera, and there's a credit balance created, that goes back to the borrower in the form of a refund. By completing the authorizations, they do designate it whether they want the funds held or used to be used for future charges or not. If they do have any questions about the Title IV authorizations, they're more than welcome to outreach to us. And yes, they can be updated at any time per the student's request. So the disbursement of funding for each semester, the timeline on that is June, late June for grant funds for the fall semester, late November for the spring semester, and late March for the summer semester. For federal and private loans, they are dispersed to the student account as early as 10 days before the first day of classes for that semester. So for this upcoming semester, I believe it starts about January 14th or so. Those funds should be posting to the student account the week of January 7th or thereabouts. In the event that the funds have not dispersed to the student account in time for the first day of classes, please let us know. We'll take a look at it. Could be something on our side that's an easy fix or something that you, the parent and or the student would have to correct on your side of things, but we'll take a look at it and let you know. Next slide, please. So in the next couple of slides, we're going to be going over the different types of aids. On the award letter, students who are eligible to receive scholarships and grants will see those on their award letter. They're awarded based upon financial need. Unlike loans, scholarships and grants do not have to be repaid by the student back to the university or a third party. For federal loans, if a student is eligible for federal student loans, they have to complete the FAFSA to determine their eligibility. And the loan documents. The Student Financial Aid Office certifies the loans on our side, as well as the Parent Plus loans for undergraduate students. So that's one other type of funding right there. If students and or parents do choose to go with the private loan route, they're more than welcome to. We cannot legally tell you which lender to go with, but you're more than welcome to do your research. And if you find a lender that is offering better rates or repayment conditions as compared to the federal loans, you're more than welcome to borrow that funding. In order for that to happen, you go through that third-party website. They'll contact us through a different third-party website, and we'll certify those funds on our side. Just like a federal loan, a private loan won't disperse to the student account until about 5 to 10 days before the beginning of the semester. And in the event that there is a rising second, third, and fourth year student who has at least a cumulative QPA of 3.0 and has exceptional financial need, there is an institutional loan titled the YECNIC Student Loan Fund, which was endowed by Wayne M. and Yancey Necknick. So if students do have any questions or parents have any questions about this loan, they're more than welcome to outreach to us, and we can provide them next steps to apply for this institutional loan. So Maggie's going to take us to a sample award letter here. This is located through the Student Financial Services website. Under the financial aid tab and understanding your award. Maggie, if you want to scroll down a little bit. So what this shows us is everything that your student sees on their financial aid award letter. On the left-hand side, it tells them what the academic year is, their student, the date that the award letter was created. Once again, that big arrow tells us make sure that the review of the financial aid document is complete. It is based off of the review of those documents. On the right-hand side there, circled in green, is the financial need. Financial need is calculated by taking the cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution from the FAFSA and the CSS profile. And whatever that leftover number is the financial need. Below that is the number of children in the household reported in college. More often than not, there's always going to be at least one since the student's going to college. But if they do have siblings that are attending college, at least half time, they would want to put those siblings on their FAFSA and the CSS profile to show that they're in college. Unfortunately, parents who are going back to school or going to school cannot be taken into consideration for financial aid purposes. Below that, there is a number reported in the household as well. So students want to make sure that that number is accurate whenever the FAFSA and the CSS profile is completed. The expected family contribution is not necessarily what one is expected to pay for the academic year, but it does show demonstrated strength with the income earned from 2 previous years ago, and then the assets reported at the time of application completion. Maggie, if you could scroll down just a little bit, right there. So on the left-hand side here, well, basically in the middle is the cost of attendance. Every student living on or off campus is going to see this on their award letter. If a student is living off campus, yes, they will have room on their award letter because every student needs a place to live and food to eat. So they'll also have board on there. But please note, your actual expenses may be slightly different whether you're on or off campus. So it breaks it down between the fall, spring, and the academic year. The direct billable expenses, students are required to pay for tuition and the mandatory fees. And of course, they do have room and board expenses as well. If you're a first year student or parent, you're going to have that orientation fee in that fall semester. Moving forward, you're not going to have that fee ever again. There's also personal expenses, which are estimated, so your costs may differ than what's listed here, regarding books and supplies, miscellaneous expenses, and travel allowance to and from campus twice a semester. All of those amounts equal your cost of attendance, which is what your financial aid award letter is based off of, not necessarily what you're expected to pay. Below that is how much in financial aid and gift aid you're going to receive if you're eligible for the undergraduate grant. It'll break it down between the fall and spring semester with an academic year amount. Scholarships or endowed funds are also listed here in the gift aid portion of the award letter. Beneath of that are loans. So any loan that is offered to the student, more often than not, if they do have a demonstrated federal need, they're going to see that federal direct subsidized loan on there. Students can also borrow an unsubsidized loan. To borrow that loan, they do need to ask their hub liaison to borrow that loan. We're not going to add it to their awards unless they tell us to. If there's any other private loans that students or parents have, it'll also be seen on here with a name of either private loan or alternative loan. That projected remaining cost, it may seem daunting, but it is taking the cost of attendance minus the total gift aid, minus the loans, and that comes with that cost. It's estimated, not necessarily what you're expected to pay. If students are eligible for federal work study, they could receive it this academic year for up to $3,000 for the year. It is an opportunity fund. Students don't have to use it, but if they do want to work on campus and be paid in a federal work study capacity, they can, and they can earn up to $3,000 this year. Beneath of that, some other options are on there, such as a monthly payment plan and or Parent Plus loan or private loan, if parents or students do choose to go those routes. As you can see from the alerts and messages, Maggie, if you could scroll down just a little bit more, there is some information in there that we do tag to the award letter in the event that there is a reduced income or there's a sibling in college or something like that. Gives you a little bit more information regarding what it is and why it is. And as you can see for federal work study, there's some information on there for that. So in the event that students students have a reason to appeal, maybe 2 years ago they were earning some money and now something has happened since 2 years ago. In the event that a parent has been retired, unemployed, or experienced a loss of income reduction, untaxed income has ceased or been reduced if there was a separation or divorce, if there has been a permanent and total disability of a parent, meaning they cannot go back to work in the same capacity as previous to that event, if something happened with COVID, or if there's another financial reason to where the parent's total income, both taxed and untaxed, has decreased at least 20% from 2 years ago to the current awarding year. So if we're talking a 23-24 year, we're going to go base the income off of 2021 income. If something happened from 2021 to next year, outreach to us, let us know. We'll talk you through it and see if we can go through go through a financial aid appeal. And I believe the last thing that I'm going to touch base on here is MyPlat Student, which is the parent portal. Students do have the opportunity to give access to their parents for MyPlat Student. I believe it is found underneath the My Info and Manage Family and Friends page. That is where the parents' information is listed, including email address. Students will authorize the email address to be signed up for it. The parents can follow the steps through the email address, and they'll be able to either see invoices, student account activity, which is a running tally of the transactions for the academic year, and some other things that the students can grant access to. Should you have any questions about it, talk to your students to see if they have signed you up for it, or let us know and we can help you out as well.
Thanks, Carrie. So That was a lot of information, a lot of great information, and we thank you, Carrie, for all of that great info. I want to be sure to leave plenty of time for questions. So we just have a few more slides here to go through, and then we will open it up to questions for both Carrie, myself, and Triana and Erica, who are also here with us on the call. So in addition to the grants and scholarships that Carrie mentioned, there are also outside scholarships that are available to you and your student to explore. These are just some listings here. You can also find them on the Hub website. The link is there. That we, recommend as resources to explore if that is something that you and your student are interested in. There are a lot of great outside scholarship opportunities, and these are some that we try to help you filter through as you look into them. And so we talked about payment and, what is due, the balance that is due after the financial aid is all applied. We have several ways that you can pay, several secure ways that you can pay. We did stop accepting cash payments a couple of years ago, but there, as I mentioned, are many other safe and secure ways to pay. We highly recommend online banking. That can be set up through both Student Information Online as well as MyPlaid Student. And there are several other ways, 529 payments that we accept, credit and debit cards, monthly payment plans. You can pay via check in person at the Hub, Flywire for international payments, just to name a few. But like we said, that online banking is really what we most highly recommend. And so speaking of payment options, we do have a monthly payment plan that is housed through a third party called Nelnet Campus Commerce. And that, of course, as the name suggests, allows you to pay the university in manageable monthly installments and also provides the convenience, again, of enrolling online. It is semester by semester. So if you're currently on a payment plan and you intend to be for the spring semester as well, please do keep in mind that you have to sign up semester by semester. At this point, there are two options remaining. A 4-month payment plan that closes on December 21st, as is indicated on the screen there, and also a 3-month payment plan option, which is currently open and closes on January 23rd of 2023. And then, of course, we want to do our best to keep you all informed. This is a screenshot of a page that is listed where you can find more specific information, such as a link to various news and alerts. We have various enrollment bulletins that you can look and see. For example, on one of those bulletins, our financial aid landscape, how much award we give out from year to year, and the average award. As well as scholarships and grants and facts and figures such as that. And then, of course, again, you keep seeing MyPlaid Student. That a link to MyPlaid Student is on there as well as mentioned early on in the presentation, the very important resource of the academic calendar. So please, as it says on the screen, we encourage you to view our website often for news, alerts, and enrollment updates. So I promised I'd be brief there at the end because we want to leave time for questions. So I think Andrew is going to help guide us through any remaining questions that weren't answered throughout the course of the presentation. So thank you, Andrew. And before I turn it back over to Andrew, I just want to thank you all again. I see great attendance and participation. So I know financial aid is important. And we are definitely, as Carrie and I have, mentioned throughout the presentation, here to help and support you. So please continue to engage with us and the hub. So thank you so much for being here. And Andrew, back to you.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Carrie, for all that really good information. And yes, great attendance tonight. And a lot of questions have already been answered in the Q&A feature. So thank you, Erica and Triana, for also answering those and being busy throughout the entire presentation. I do invite you all to keep submitting your presentations, submitting your questions, sorry, to the Q&A feature, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can this evening. There is a question I see immediately about sending the presentation to participants to have the references handy. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our Tartan Family Webinar Series website. So that will be available in the next couple of days. I'll also be following up with all of you on the webinar tonight with a follow-up survey and the link to the website where the recording is. All right. Let's see if there's any other questions that we can go back to. There was a question I see that was saved for answering live. If there was a big change in sort of a difference between 2021 and 2022 tax returns, would those be considered, or how would a parent handle that?
Yes. So for the 23-24 school year, it's going to be based upon 2021 income as a base. We need that standard base for verification purposes. In the event that there was at least a 20% decrease of total income, which is taxed and untaxed, from 21 to 22, have you reach out to your hub liaison to discuss a second review. You're more than welcome to start that discussion now. We could give you a heads up on the timeline of that closer to whenever award letters go out. But yes, we'll take a look at it. More than happy to, and we'll drill down to see if we're able to help you out with some additional assistance.
Great, thank you. Are parents able to apply for scholarships for their students?
Parents can, depends on the scholarship agency if they're accepting the information on behalf of the student. That's something they want to check out, but typically it's the students who do the legwork, reach the scholarship agency and are awarded the funding. And then that funding gets sent either to the student or the parent, or sent over to us directly to apply to the student's account.
Great. This is a question regarding payments and a credit card payment specifically. Is there a fee for using a credit card to pay? And do we accept partial credit card payments with a remainder paid via a different form or online banking question?
Yes, our third party used for card payments is ECSI, and they charge a non-refundable convenience fee of 2.52% for a credit card and 0.5% for a debit card. So if you're paying with a debit card, you might as well link a bank account to either the SIO or the MyPlaid student account and make a payment that way at no charge. And doesn't matter how many payments are made or where they're coming from, as long as that student account balance is paid off in full, that is all that matters to us.
A couple questions about FAFSA and the CSS. Is the FAFSA required if they're only pursuing private loans?
For private loans, neither application would be required. But if you do want to attempt to apply for federal and institutional aid, at least the FAFSA and the CSS profile would have to be completed.
Looks like I think all of the questions so far submitted have been answered. Okay, so there is a question with if there is a family with more than one CMU student, should their financial aid offer be similar given that they are dependents and have similar income, or does it vary from college to college within CMU?
That's a good question, and there's not really a good answer to this one, unfortunately. You have to remember that the students' applications are unique to themselves. The only information that's going to be the same is the parents' information. And the parents' information, such as assets, can theoretically be different if they're completed on a different date. And also depending upon which year that the student's enrolled into, maybe one's a freshman, one's a first year, one's a second year, there could be different awarding strategies for those years as well. So please keep that in mind, that even though it's the parents' information might be almost exactly the same, chances are the award letter is going to be different between the two students.
I think this one might have been addressed, but I saw a couple come in too. If a student is considering off-campus housing, so I think this goes with the award letter, the offer letter that you were talking about. If they were considering off-campus housing, will their financial aid award be reduced, or how will that affect the amount of aid the students receive?
Sure, I can speak of this year because we don't yet know what next year is going to bring us. How it was handled this year is the housing budget for on-campus students was $10,000. For those who chose to live off campus, their housing budget was reduced by $1,500 to a total of $8,500. So yes, this year there would have been a reduction of $1,500 of financial aid if students chose to live off campus as compared to on campus.
All right, for spring 2023 tuition, should they select a payment plan now?
Yes, they're more than welcome to select the payment plan now if they want. I believe I saw a question in the chat. They said that somebody asked if the deadline for that 3 installment plan was January 23rd. You're more than welcome to sign up for that by that enrollment deadline date. As long as that balance is paid off in full by the end of January, there won't be any interest fees applied to the student account.
Great. This might have been already discussed too, but do we need to complete both the FAFSA and the CSS each year?
To be considered for federal and institutional aid, yes.
If you already have the FAFSA schedule to pay, but you want to change for the spring semester to do a different form of a payment plan or monthly payments, can you do it on the Hub website, or how would you go about that?
That's a good question. I don't know if it was phrased very well, but it doesn't matter how you pay as long as it's paid off in full, honestly. If you know that you're going to have enough aid to come in, I wouldn't sign up for a payment plan if you don't need to. There's no reason to enroll into the payment plan to spread the payments out, pay that $40 enrollment fee if you don't have to. But yeah, whether you're taking out aid in the fall and you don't plan on using, whether you're taking out loans in the fall and you don't plan on using them in the spring, you may want to set something else up to make sure that balance is paid off in full.
If a parent's financial situation has changed significantly in the middle of the current academic year, so 2022, 2023, is it also possible to consider a review for financial aid for the remainder of the year, so for spring 2023?
Potentially, yes. That's a conversation that you will want to have with your Hub liaison. But like I said before, with that appeal page, there has to be a reduction of total income, at least 20% from the base year, 22-23 school year is base year's 2020 income to present day or 2022 income. So at least a reduction from one year to the next.
Could you talk a little bit about summer financial aid?
Summer financial aid is extremely limited when it comes to grants or gift aid. There is a summer financial aid website through the Student Financial Services website that students and parents can take a look at. In order to be eligible for federal loans in the summer, students have to take at least 18 units, which is half-time enrollment. If they are choosing to borrow federal loans, or if a parent is choosing to borrow a loan, a PLUS loan or a private loan, anything like that, there's a summer loan form that would have to be completed. That would become available typically in March or April of 2023 for next year. In terms of any gift aid or grants, there is the Tartan Summer Grant that is available to students. They can go ahead and apply for it. I believe the funding is, Maggie, I believe it's one class for most students. There is an application for it. There are strict deadlines for it. So check out the Summer Financial Aid website for more information.
Right. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to keep using the Q&A feature in the bottom of your control panel.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to the summer financial aid, just thinking, is that changes the availability of summer aid because it's primarily institutional funding does change from year to year. So as Carrie mentioned, it's just best to keep up with the website, particularly as it gets closer to summer and the application for consideration starts to open up.
Great. There's a question about a Parent Plus loan. So there was a parent that wasn't sure how much to request. They didn't really understand the award letter at the time. So they were approved for an amount that they requested. However, the school didn't use that total amount, and so they still had to pay for out-of-pocket expenses. Can you explain sort of maybe a little bit more about how the amount used for the school is determined by the school?
Sure. So whenever a Parent Plus loan application is completed, parents have two options to make, whether they request a specific amount, let's use $10,000 for example, or they choose the maximum loan option. So what the maximum loan option is, we take the cost of attendance minus all other aid awarded to the student. And if there is a remaining gap, let's call it $7,500, we can award a loan of $7,500 for the student for the academic year or for the time period, whether it's the fall or the spring semester, however the loan application is completed. So yes, a parent could be approved for $10,000, but only $7,500 was awarded because of that remaining gap. We cannot award more aid than the cost of attendance for an academic year, which is a federal regulation. There's also some other parts to that. Is if a parent does borrow a plus loan, call it $10,000, that is the gross amount. You have to remember that there are origination fees associated with those loans. I believe it's about 4.2, 4.3% that's taken off the top of the loan and cut by the government before it is posted to the student account. So you want to keep that in mind if there is a remaining balance or a gap still owed after that loan has been awarded and dispersed.
And for a Parent Plus loan, what's the deadline to apply to that? Is there still time for one to be applied for the spring 2023 semester?
Yes. The last day for us to originate a loan for the spring semester would be, I believe, the last day of finals in the spring. So you're talking at some point in May. But I would say get it done sooner than later to avoid any potential interest fees to the student account. And you have to remember both the application has to be approved and then the plus master promissory note has to be completed by the parent who is borrowing the loan.
Great. So we are out of questions in the Q&A field, so I will do a last call for anyone who has any lasting questions. There's one more question that came in. This one sort of involves graduate students. So there's an understanding that there's no financial aid for graduate students. And if a student is able to get an undergrad and a master's at the same time in 4 years, can they still get financial aid for all 4 years, or would that be limited because of the graduate classes?
Potentially how the program is set up, it could be limited on that last semester or potentially that last year. Graduate financial aid is handled in-house by the graduate departments in terms of scholarships or fellowships. We can assist the students with federal funds such as the federal direct unsubsidized loan, which can be received for up to $20,500 for the academic year, or a graduate plus loan, which is very similar to the Parent Plus loan. The student would have to apply for it. If approved, complete the plus master promissory note as well. So depending on the program, I know Melissa, she works with some students who go undergrad to grad from the 7th to the 8th semester. So depending upon the program, that could switch from undergraduate funding to graduate funding at that point.
So I think someone had maybe a little bit of a follow-up on that. So if a student takes graduate classes as an undergraduate before they graduate, could they still get financial aid, right?
Potentially, yes, but they cannot delay their undergraduate degree by taking graduate courses to continue to receive that undergraduate aid. That's a big no-no. It gets caught. Discussions will be had.
Great. Some more are coming in. What is the maximum number of years of financial aid for an undergraduate program?
Students have to maintain federal satisfactory academic progress. Part of this question can go with that. Satisfactory academic progress is completing 80% of attempted units and having a cumulative QPA of 2.0. As long as they are progressing through their program, they can receive aid for typically up to 6 years. Once that 6th year comes about, something happens, they have to continue to pursue their degree into a 7th year or something like that. Conversation at that point would want to be had with their hub liaison, and we most likely would have to pursue different options.
If a parent's income, this might have been discussed as well. So if my parent's income changes for more than 20%, when is the last day to contact a hub liaison to apply for a revision for the spring 2023 semester?
So we're here in December right now. At this point, we would want to wait until you file your taxes for 2022. Tax deadline's April 15th. Contact us when you file your taxes. We'll take a look at them. And if there is that 20% or more decrease in total income from 2020 to 2022, we'll go ahead and make that change for the academic year.
Great. I know we've talked a lot about the Parent Plus loan. Could you give maybe a little bit more of a description about what a Parent Plus loan is?
A Parent Plus loan is a loan that a parent takes out in their name to help pay for their child's educational costs. It is a credit-based loan. The application is done online through the studentaid.gov website. Parent signs in with their federal student aid ID and password, which is the same information used to sign the FAFSA. They could go ahead and complete the application. Depending on their credit. Now, I can't tell you what score's good, what score's bad, which one's going to get approved or not. I don't know that information, but depending upon their credit, they'll be approved for the loan for the amount that they requested. Some of those who say they have good credit, I don't know what good credit is. It's up to the borrower, may be approved for a higher amount than someone who doesn't have good credit. So credit-based loan, complete the application, the MPN, it disperses to the student account. Repayment for a Parent Plus loan begins 60 days after the funds have posted to the student account. So keep that in mind.
Since you did say when the repayment process starts for a Parent Plus loan, when does loan repayment usually start after a student graduates?
Repayment, the 6-month grace period on the undergraduate loans begins once a student drops below half-time status, which at CMU is 18 units. So whether it's taking one semester under 18 units, taking a leave of absence, graduating, withdrawing, etc., there's that 6-month grace period that starts. On that 7th month is whenever repayment will begin. During that 6-month grace period, the lender will outreach to the student to discuss their repayment options.
If tuition at the university goes up, will grants increase as well?
Depends on the expected family contribution from the FAFSA and the CSS profile. That can change each and every year. So if the cost of attendance increases, which includes tuition, mandatory fees, room, board, etc., and if your EFC stays the same, your demonstrated needs going to go up. So theoretically, your aid should increase. But you have to remember, part of the need-based aid that is awarded can be the subsidized loan. And the subsidized loan does have loan limits of $3,500 as a first-year student, $4,500 as a second-year student, and $5,500 for a third-year student and beyond. So keep that in mind when you take a look at your award letter year after year.
Great. About the pending debt relief program that is out there federally, does that affect financial aid awarded in 2023, 2024?
To my knowledge, it doesn't. I don't know if anybody has heard anything else, but the advice that I give to all my students who ask me is take a look at that website. Federal student aid is going to be your guide to that. They have all of the up-to-date information regarding the debt relief program.
And then what about the current freeze in place on federal parent and student loans? Does that intersect anything, or how will that?
Believe it expires on December 31st. I believe January 1st of 23 is whenever it starts back up. So keep that in mind. Unless the current administration does choose to extend it once again, repayment and interest on unsubsidized and plus loans will begin once again here in January.
Another sort of repayment question. So if a student goes on an internship that lasts over 6 months, would that trigger the loan repayment?
If they're not enrolled, if they're not actively enrolled, at least half-time at 18 units, yes, that will trigger the grace period. And then on that 7th month is whenever repayment would begin.
Sticking on the topic of student loans, does the interest on student loans accrue until they graduate before they start repayment, or does that start 6 months after they graduate?
Unsubsidized loan will begin to earn interest upon disbursement to the student account for the amount that's disbursed. The subsidized loan doesn't earn interest as long as you're enrolled at least half-time, 18 units. But once you drop below that half-time threshold, graduate, withdrawal, leave of absence, anything like that, after that 6-month grace period, that's whenever the subsidized loan begins to earn interest as well.
I guess this might be a question for all of us. Does CMU hold workshops to make students aware of scholarships and grants that are available, and how do they go about that application process?
So we do have a financial literacy program, which I am a part of here. We are trying to get it started back up here since COVID happened. Some of the topics we do talk about is scholarships. One thing that I do recommend to all the students who ask me about scholarships is don't think nationally. Don't apply to Coca-Cola because you're applying against everybody in the nation. Think locally, think small businesses, mom and pop shops around Main Street or your hometown. Parents' jobs, parents' companies, friends' parents' companies, anything like that. $500 here, $1,000 here adds up pretty quickly.
Great. Right, one last question came in. So when a student goes abroad, does FAFSA work the same, even if the cost might be based on a different school?
So when a student chooses to go through a study abroad program, they have three different types of programs they can do. They can do the pay direct or external route. If that happens, you're paying that program directly out of your pocket. In the event that the student chooses to go that way, they are not eligible for their institutional aid. To be eligible for federal aid, they have to do a consortium agreement. That comes through us in the financial aid office. We'll work on that. We'll get that process for the student. If students choose to go to an exchange program or a sponsored program through the study abroad office, everything is still handled in-house. They'll see tuition and the technology fee on their student account. They'll see their financial aid, undergraduate grant, Pell Grant, et cetera, loans, et cetera, posted to their student account. Same payment due dates that we always have here on our side. One big difference is instead of tuition and all those different mandatory fees, you're going to see an inflated tuition cost. So I think this year it's like $38,000 plus the technology fee. And then it's my understanding that students not are necessarily on their own, but they do get a stipend after they start the program to help pay for room and board while abroad.
Someone just is asking for a repeat. Could you repeat that loan interest accrual answer again about the 6 months?
Subsidized loan doesn't earn interest while students are enrolled at least half-time, 18 units. Unsubsidized loan and Parent Plus loans will earn interest immediately. For the subsidized loan, once they drop below 18 units, their information is reported to the National Student Clearinghouse, who notifies who the lenders can see their enrollment information. There's that 6-month grace period when the lenders will outreach to the students to discuss repayment. On that 7th month, interest will then begin for that subsidized loan, and then repayment begins for all loans.
Great. Right, it does look like we have a little pause in questions, so we'll just give one more second to see if anyone wants to submit one more. All right, well, almost right on time. And we kept a lot of people, so thank you everyone for staying throughout the final minutes of the presentation. And thank you all for joining us tonight to learn more about the Hub and the financial aid process for next academic year. A huge thank you to Maggie, Carrie, Triana, and Erica for answering all those questions and all of that great information. And as always, the Office of Parent and Family Engagement would love to hear your feedback on this webinar and webinars that you'd like to see during the spring semester. So I am putting a quick link in the chat for a survey, very brief, just to let us know what you think and talk about what you would like to see in the spring. We do look forward to connecting with you during the spring semester with a new slate of webinars, and dates and information for those can be found on the Tartan Family Webinar Series website. As always, the Office of Parent and Family Engagement is here for you, so please reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns at parents@andrew.cmu.edu. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.